Games really are works of art. Whether a piece so awful in construct that it's endearing...
Everyone else is blue for Miguel.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh. So guys...
A piece so brilliantly painted and infused with emotion that's enough to make a grown man cry. Or a piece so horrifyingly frightening it makes you not want to play the video game anymore. Video games can truly deliver some of the best and most interactive pieces of art and media we've yet to achieve. And yet, none of these are my favorite. Despite my love of history, world building, and beautiful storytelling, Red Dead Redemption 2, Metro, Fallout, Cyberpunk, nor even Hearts of Iron 4 can claim the title of my beloved. Hell, even my introduction to this beautiful, strange world of creative endeavors, that being Pokemon, White 2 specifically, can't even claim that title. No, rather my favorite game comes from the Star Wars franchise, and it's on the Wii? Yeah, it's The Force Unleashed. A game I believe has no reason to be as good as it is. But what is The Force Unleashed?
I'm like a shell-shocked vet from Nam.
The Force Unleashed is a 2008 game made for the Xbox 360 and PS3, with a truly awful port to PC. The Force Unleashed is also a 2008 game made for the Wii and PS2. Yes, that's right, it's two different games. Allegedly due to the PS2 and Wii being different generations of consoles, in comparison to the Xbox 360 and PS3, two separate teams were needed to build the game, pretty much parallel, following the same general outline of the story. As such, the game is more or less two completely different interpretations of the same story. I have many reasons for my belief that the Wii is the superior version, that being nostalgia, better controls, a longer campaign, better character development, superior level and enemy designs, and of course the fact that I only played the Xbox version on the notoriously awful PC port. Why is that counting against the Xbox version when I knew the PC port was horrible going in? I don't know, but you can't stop me. Also, please do not listen to the reviews which say that the PC version is bad because the game is hard-locked at 30 frames per second. The controls themselves are so repugnant to God that this port made me rage quit. There are only really two games I've ever rage quit before, and one of them is a single-player game that is a port of my favorite game. People who say that the port is bad because it lacks frame is like saying that the only issue with Marvel Rivals is that it has frame-dropping issues. No dog, I can't look at Doctor Strange without my entire house burning down. Sorry, I got carried away. I really don't like the PC port. The good version of this game, i.e. the Wii version, has better mechanics in general, like the fact that Force Push can actually affect more than one fecking enemy. I'm getting off topic here. The other major difference is that supposedly the Wii version looks worse. If it does, could you please let me know, because I cannot tell.
It'll be endless, I will fight you every day.
Now, I could sit here and summarize the entire story of The Force Unleashed, a segment I did write and record, but I didn't like the segment, and neither did the mold I accidentally ingested, and is now currently in control of my brain. Rather, let me tell you why this story is worthwhile. Firstly, Starkiller is an interesting character. Galen Merrick is not exactly immediately charismatic or intriguing. You are really pulled in by the fact that this guy is Vader's secret apprentice, but as soon as you start playing as him, you start to feel for the guy, and see how his anger is really what enslaves him to the will of Vader. You feel Starkiller's drive to do good, but how often his anger blinds him to it. Even towards the end of the game, he never fully gives up on his anger, but is rather able to redirect it towards protecting rather than destroying. I'm not saying that this story is as great as some other games, nor that even necessarily you're gonna feel the feels playing this game. Truth be told, as much as I like this game's story and Starkiller's character, it's very much not as developed as something like Cyberpunk, Metro, or Red Dead 2. Rather, the story is a really compelling, if not amazingly executed, story of how anger can enslave someone, and how genuine care for other people can pull someone out of that pit of anger. Also, Starkiller's anger is, really accurate. I don't know how to describe it, but Sam Witwer does a great job doing a realistic portrayal of someone with deep anger issues. By the end of the story, you really do want a happy ending for the guy because he's trying his best. Unfortunately, he does not get that. Juno is another story. I can't say she's particularly compelling, but that's mostly because she is really a character experienced almost entirely through Starkiller liking her. Her introduction, despite featuring one of the most unnecessary wardrobe changes I've ever seen in a game. Seriously, even as like an 8-year-old, I thought this was wild.
Decorated combat pilot with over 100 combat missions, and commanding officer during the bombing of Kalos. Hand-picked by Lord Vader to lead his Black 5 squadron, but later reassigned to a top-secret project. Is there a psychological profile in there too?
Actually, yes. But it's restricted. Oh, Master, I can tell you she's going to be impossible to reprogram.
Do you know why you're here?
Yes.
I'm sick of training new pilots.
Like, this is not a character building thing. She just straight up loses clothes throughout the game to appeal to a certain demographic. Well, she could be a really cool Spec Ops character, she's overall just kind of a wasted opportunity. She does interact with Starkiller in a believable way, and their back and forths can be quite fun. However, she is just strange. Supposedly, she's led an entire extermination campaign previously. I refuse to believe this. I don't care how desperate the Emperor was for competent commanders. There is no way on Earth, or space I guess, that they would entrust such a high command position to someone this young. And this is one of the issues with her. She's supposed to be a bad butt and hot young officer, but also a cool-headed veteran. I'm not saying you can't be all those things at once, necessarily, just that it's kinda obvious her actual character played second fiddle to providing a woman for the guy to get. Again, in most cutscenes, she's actually fine. The voice actor does a good job getting a personality through, and I am genuinely interested in this character, but lore and meta-wise, she's completely underutilized, and her character doesn't really make any sense. Speaking of underutilized, Proxy is Starkiller's training robot. He has the ability to shapeshift and fight with some level of proficiency in the Xbox version. In the Wii version, he just kind of exists and gets to prompt this banger of a line.
I hate beating him.
I think he does too.
He's fine. I really have nothing to say about him other than that. He's just not used a lot in the Wii version. In the Xbox, when he is used, it's weird. He just wants to kill Starkiller to complete his training or something. It's really odd. Speaking of fine, let me introduce you to the finest Jedi ever made, General Rom Koda. Fun fact, this is the only canon character from the game. Well, I mean, like, Darth Vader's canon, but I mean, he's here on this thing of Kenobi. General Rom Koda has a pretty unique reason why he survived Order 66. He's racist. He does not trust clone troopers and thus refused to fight with them during the Clone Wars. Likely because it would have been pretty sus if he wasn't allowed to fight with a regular non-clone militia. I guess Palpatine just kind of allowed him to do that, and now he leads that army in rebellion against the Empire. Eventually, Starkiller finds and blinds him in what remains a really cool use of lightsaber physics.
I sense only me?
And chucks Koda into space, thus ushering in the long store's tradition of space not really being that dangerous. Eventually, he reunites with Starkiller and chooses to try to bring him to the light and jumpstart a larger rebellion while he's at it. While drunk and blind, Koda is a pretty funny if stereotypical guy.
I was beginning to worry that you died in your sleep.
I'm starting to wish that I had.
Who, if he becomes the only person to appear in new canon, I really won't be mad about. This guy's really cool and he's always a treat to see. He's a very interesting Jedi who could be explored far more than he is in game and could have numerous interesting stories written around him. Seriously, this guy exudes an aura completely unmatched by any Jedi besides like Mace Windu or Plo Koon. Finally, Vader serves as pretty much the primary antagonist throughout the game. Despite not really appearing that often in-game, He's used very well in it. The entire game shows that Anakin is not utterly dead within Vader. The spirit of rebellion against the powers that be is still within Vader. And even though at this point of time he is unable to fully stand against the Emperor, it provides ample foreshadowing that he's not as loyal as he appears in the first 2 movies of the original trilogy. Furthermore, seeing Starkiller get murdered by the Emperor provides a pretty good parallel to when he sees Luke getting killed. With this game being canon, the moment where he turns in the original trilogy is now further justified by the fact that he's been here before. But when it was Galen, Vader wasn't strong enough to save his adopted son. This would also make his saving of Luke the 3rd time someone close to him chose to reject him. But this time, Vader sees his own flaws and does the right thing. While Vader's characterization in this game is not like super amazing, or the best thing ever, but it's really good and is really great at showing Vader's internal anguish for how short of a game this is and how little it actually focuses on Vader. It also shows pretty well how Vader completely passes all his worst traits on to Starkiller, and how Starkiller needs to basically try and figure out how to work past them.
Rexy, Crino Crota Cada. Hola.
Let's see. You know I'm done here.
Shocking as it may be, I do have a point to this video. The point is that Starkiller should be returned to canon. Despite being my favorite video game, I'm not advocating for the return of The Force Unleashed to canon. Firstly, I don't want to see it get ruined by a remake, which would have to fundamentally change so many aspects of the game that it would basically be unrecognizable. Secondly, The Force Unleashed just doesn't work in modern canon. And the only reason it really worked in the EU canon was because everything not in the movies was fairly soft canon. So the things in the actual game had to be taken with a grain of salt, just like pretty much every expanded media. The Force Unleashed is all over the place and makes random canon decisions like Shakti's fate, or Rom Coda existing, who goes completely unmentioned in anything other than the Elite Squadron game, a Battlefront ripoff I have for DS? Like, despite apparently being this strange and openly rebellious Jedi, neither the Clone Wars run nor any game or piece of media, as far as I can see, ever mention him. Except recently. By the way, someone who's working for Disney Plus right now is a really big fan of Starkiller, and I appreciate you. No, the core bones of The Force Unleashed are good, and the characters of Starkiller and Rom Coda should definitely return to canon, but the game itself basically needs to be entirely overturned and made into something entirely different. Not to mention, Starkiller can't be Vader's apprentice, he's gonna have to kind of be an Inquisitor in some form. Frankly, the game should be left to its amazing Wii version. It's best to move on and still appreciate this game, while taking its best aspects and applying them to something new. The 3 best aspects of the game, which justify its story being remade and recanonized, are its effect on Vader's story, the expansion of the early rebellion, and its brutal vision of the Force. I'm going to start with the last point because no one can stop me. Due to silly things like storytelling, thematic relevance, character motivation, and medium, we rarely get to see the sheer destructive power of the Force. I think a truly unhinged Starkiller is a really good means to view the full power of the dark side through, and makes incredibly fun gameplay. Seriously, despite the 300 pixels this game has, and its complete lack of graphical prowess and detail, the utter brutality of kills you can get in this game is truly a delight. I sound psychotic. Mostly my point here is that Starkiller is a pretty unique character, as he is one of the few Star Wars characters truly gifted in the Force, entirely trained for combat, and filled with enough rage to casually toss a Jedi around. Imagine like Prime Maul without any sense of actual Sith philosophy and the anger that he has during the Clone Wars. That's what Starkiller can be. With modern gaming technology, fighting as Starkiller with full access to just absurdly violent powers of the Force would be awesome. And I mean awesome in a biblical sense. While Starkiller cannot be returned to his pre-decanonization power level, because even those who like made the game admitted that that was completely absurd and not an actual representation of what happened.
George approved those concepts, the story concepts and the physical concepts of how the Force would be portrayed. George was like, yes, for the purposes of this video game, which is a specific campfire around which you tell certain stories, this is how the Force is going to behave.
I don't think that Starkiller, being one of the most combat proficient Force wielders we've seen, is that nonsensical. That's the only thing Starkiller does. The guy doesn't even know how to meditate. That's not even like a Force thing. This guy straight up never relaxed before.
What are you doing?
Meditating. Jedi can sometimes see visions of the future.
Have you done this before?
I've never been a Jedi before.
Starkiller is like an artillery piece, extremely powerful, but without someone to aim him, he's not gonna do much. Furthermore, he can be easily neutralized by an enemy less concerned with raw power and more strategic and tactical planning. In the wise words of Dexter Deshawn, he's
only good at some things.
Basically, while he needs to be nerfed, it makes sense that he's a super powerful fighter, even in comparison to more powerful Force users, because he's had like no mystical connection to the Force. It's raw, pure fighting ability. For Starkiller, it's really just a big stick, which is also what makes the game so fun, and what would make a new rendition of the game entirely worth playing. Secondly, throughout all of Star Wars history, and even now, the early rebellion is kinda strange. Without the Yuuzhan Vong, or however you pronounce their name, I don't know, as an existential threat, there's kinda never been a reason why the Empire does this. Like, why are they using traditional, like, military tactics? It really doesn't make that much sense. Don't get me wrong, the Imperial policy and way it fights the rebels as if they are fighting an actual enemy army is stupid, and I understand that that's the result of propaganda, corruption, and their ideology. It makes sense within context of how the Empire functions. But I refuse to believe that the entire Imperial system would actually create such a ridiculously planned military if there was literally no traditional army somewhere to fight. Someone like Coda with a decently sized army of Clone Wars veterans would serve this role very well. A solid enough threat for the Empire to play up as an enemy in need of maintaining a large standing army against, but not actually dangerous enough to deal with smartly. They don't need to actually deal with them smartly because they're not that big of a threat, but they're big enough that they can plan their entire military around it and people not bring up weird questions. The character of Starkiller could also help explain why it took so long for the rebellion to really get its footing. If there was a competent Inquisitor cutting down any Jedi or politician who posed any serious danger, it would make sense that they had to operate underground for so long. If there was an assassin as deadly and horrifying as an Inquisitor Starkiller running around, it would do a lot to explain why the Empire, which due to the nature of most shows, games, and other pieces of media, is so fecking incompetent, were genuinely a terrifying threat to any would-be rebels. While Starkiller actually starting the Rebel Alliance, a thing that actually happens in-game, needs to be cut as it was a ridiculous and weird plot point to begin with, I could see an Inquisitor Starkiller being convinced to help certain rebels and have his story climax in protecting some information, which saves like Bail Organa or Mon Mothma or some other public figure known to be dissenter but not openly rebellious, which allows them to start building up the rebellion slowly and continue to use Coda and his vets as the backbone for Rebel Alliance. That would make for an interesting story and help explain how the Rebel Alliance formed and why it had to stay underground for so long. Even without this, it makes sense that the Rebel Alliance has to be, like underground, because the Empire is popular and stuff. I think this just could help explain certain things in the Star Wars canon a bit better. Thirdly, it just makes Darth Vader story better. While not bad or severely lacking justification, Vader's turn back to the light at the end of the original trilogy is seemingly pretty arbitrary, especially when Luke could have essentially died several times before and Vader did not care. But if you add the fact that this is the third time he's been rejected by a close friend or child due to his ideology, and the second time a child of his has been put in mortal danger by the Emperor directly, it makes a lot more sense. The game gives really good, if not particularly deep, insight into Vader's self-hatred and just how fully enslaved he is to the Emperor. The game does a good job of showing why Vader might come to resent the Emperor and just needs something to love in order to turn against him. Vader works really well as a character constantly appearing as a side character in other pieces of media, and a reworked Starkiller game could give some really good insight into his tragedy and how unable he is to actually resist the power of the Emperor. Also, before we move on, I don't want to hear anything about bad Disney lightsaber physics when this was canon. How does that even work? How on earth are the things which cut through everything and is made of energy pinning someone to a pole? I don't want to hear it anymore. You can get with this, or you can get with that. The Wii. Okay. Some of this is nostalgia, yes. But I've heard so many arguments about why the Xbox version is better, and none of them really make sense. Things like, it looks better. Yeah, slightly. It has better controls. Not true. The combat's more fun. So untrue. Its level design is better. Nuh-uh. The DLC makes it better. Not in the slightest. Overall, the Wii version has more mainline content, which is needed because the Xbox version rushes through the story so quickly, it's kinda hard to actually understand what's going on. I know this game like the back of my hand on the Wii, and I was still confused at points. In general, you get slightly more interactions between Starkiller and his crew on the Wii version, which does a lot for the characters. The Xbox version certainly has higher quality interactions in terms of graphics, facial expressions, and overall vibes, but honestly it's just not enough. Whenever it comes to actually caring about characters, sometimes quantity does take the cake over quality, simply because it's way easier to develop someone's traits and reasons to like them over several interactions rather than a few very expressive ones. I think Proxy's relationship was better developed in the Xbox version, but that's because in the Xbox version, Proxy wants to kill Starkiller. Yeah, if you've played the Wii version like I did and have never experienced this version, apparently Proxy is programmed to kill Starkiller, which actually explains so much. In the Wii version, this line about programming,
I can tell you she's going to be impossible to reprogram.
Him being the display for your clothes and fighting Vader just kind of exist. With the information he's actually supposed to be constantly training Starkiller by trying to kill him, all these things make so much more sense. But I'm also kind of glad they cut the storyline out because it's weird and kind of just not important. It just kind of happens, and there's no, actual meaning to it, really. This game is not perfect. The story really shows its flaws with arcs such as Proxy's. There's simply not enough time in the game to develop character bonds correctly. The Wii version is better at this by extending the campaign and giving Juno and Starkiller more time to interact with each other, but ends up basically cutting Proxy out of the story entirely. The writing and plot are pretty good in their outlines. Juno and Starkiller actually complement each other well. Proxy is interesting in concept, if not in execution. Vader and the Emperor act as really good villains, and as rushed as it is, Starkiller's switch to fighting them is well handled and feels very natural. Coda is a joy to watch, and his mentorship is, again, too rushed to really establish this proper kind of relationship with Starkiller, but what we get gives us a glimpse into a really good story. Albeit the criticism that Starkiller seems stilted and unemotional with the Wii's in-game rendering cutscenes is definitely valid and really shows it sometimes. Overall, however, the superior mechanics and character interactions in the Wii version simply do wonders to make you actually care about these characters. Seriously, if you've only played the Xbox and you're like, I don't really like anyone here, or it's just like, okay, well, they didn't really do anything, go play the Wii version. It has so much more and it's so much better. Speaking of the differences, please indulge my rant of why I love the Wii's mechanics. The most consistent critique of the Wii game I've seen is that it's just swinging the Wii remote around without precision. Yeah, and it's pretty fun. I don't know what to say, I like this. Swinging my hand around like I yearn for dislocation is way more engaging and fun than just left clicking a lot. And yeah, combos and special moves are significantly more difficult with motion controls. Counterpoint, why are you using combos in The Force Unleashed? They're too complicated. Am I stupid? Yes, but that's unimportant. Just slash, dude. Really, just slash. It's really effective. The Wii version also just gives you access to more powerful force moves right off the bat. For example, force push from the outset in the Wii version is able to hit multiple enemies. I believe that upgrading it on the PC version gives you this ability, but needing to upgrade it to hit more than one person is stupid, and I do not care for it. Also, look at this. On the Wii version, your force hold actually locks on to targets. Not so in the PC version. Seriously, I mean, like in both games, you kind of don't know where someone's gonna go when you start flinging them, but in the PC, it's completely insane and never makes any sense. Why are you going in that direction? The Wii version also makes an incessant use of hallways, which is an improvement over the arena-based system in the Xbox version. It gives you a definite sense of progress, makes it way clearer what the objective is, and means that since arena battles only really occur during boss battles or major events, there's no weird camera movements in either normal gameplay or boss battles usually, which can cause frustrations. I had a lot of issues with the camera and not knowing where to go. I don't know. I like the hallways to arenas much better in the Wii version. It's much better designed. Both the Wii and PC version have pretty janky movement in their own unique ways, so the Wii version removing most of the aggravating places to navigate is very much appreciated. Because what you do experience is still frustrating. You will still get turned around and there will be odd camera movements. But the Wii version knows how to basically avoid most of this, so it's not as bad as it could be. Finally, QuickTime events. I don't usually like them. I've not played a lot of games with QuickTime events, but just in general, I find them to pull you out of the game and not really provide an actual skilled challenge, either being trivial or just feeling unfair. Force Unleashed for the Wii has the single best QuickTime system in any game I've ever played or seen. Seriously, look at this. It's difficult enough that it provides an actual challenge, the motion controls are solid enough that never feels unfair, and the over-the-top cinematics make it really unique and fun. I don't know what else to say. Sorry, this is peak QuickTime event. Something I would say is genuinely not possible on other consoles or PC. So I guess Wii supremacy? Also, please look at the different designs for these robots on Raxus. This is enough to prove the Wii's superiority. These guys are peak design and so cool. This pile of crap deserves incineration.
I drank too much beer, I should eat more vegetables.
In conclusion, game fun. No, that's really it. It's a tight story with good, if not somewhat one-dimensional characters, an innovative QuickTime system, decent controls, fun game design, and a story which elevates the original trilogy. If you have a Wii or Wii U and you can find a well-priced copy, go for it, dog. It's worth it. You can also get it on the Switch, but get it on the Wii if you can. Seriously, baby gamers, you won't regret giving The Force Unleashed a try. On the Wii, that is. You will regret it if you play on PC. And I think that this game should absolutely get reworked and put back into Canon. My emails are open, Mr. George Lucas. I'll write the game for you, alright? Just give me 2 million. Let's go touch grass together until I reappear in another couple of years. Peace.